June 12, 1962. Alcatraz Island, San Francisco Bay, 7:15 a.m. A guard walks down the cell block for morning count, just like he's done every day for years. 234 inmates, 234 beds, routine, boring, safe, but this morning is different. He stops at cell 138, Frank Morris's cell. The blankets are bunched up, shaped like a sleeping body, but something's wrong. The shape doesn't move, doesn't breathe. The guard steps closer and his blood runs cold. It's a head, a human head, but it's not moving. It's not attached to anything. He rips the blankets away and stares at a dummy, a paper match head with painted skin and real human hair, propped on a pillow to look like a sleeping man. He runs to the next cell. John Anglin, same thing, a dummy. Then Clarence Anglin's cell, another dummy. 3 men, gone. The news spreads through Alcatraz like wildfire. The warden is called. The FBI is notified. The Coast Guard is mobilized. Within hours, the entire country knows. 3 men have escaped from America's most secure prison, The Rock, the place everyone said was a... But here's the question that would haunt investigators for decades. Did they make it? Or did the cold, dark waters of San Francisco Bay swallow them forever? Tonight, on Dark Evidence, we unravel the greatest escape mystery in American history. The plan, the execution, the evidence, and the question that remains unanswered more than 60 years later. The men who dared. To understand this escape, you must first understand the men who planned it. Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960. He was 34 years old, but he'd already spent most of his life behind bars. Orphaned as a child, shuffled between foster homes, he learned early that the world wasn't going to give him anything. He took to crime, burglary, robbery, the kind of crimes that landed him in some of the toughest prisons in America, and he escaped from every single one of them. By the time he reached Alcatraz, prison officials knew they had a problem. Morris was smart, dangerously smart, IQ tested at 133 genius level. He'd already tried to break out of other prisons multiple times. Alcatraz was supposed to be the place that finally held him. John Anglin arrived later in 1960. He was 30 years old, a bank robber from Georgia with a brother who shared his profession and his fate. John was the quieter one, the planner, the one who thought before he acted. Clarence Anglin joined his brother in early 1961. He was 29, the younger of the two, but just as determined. The Anglin brothers had grown up poor on a farm, worked the land, learned to survive on nothing. They'd already tried escaping together from other prisons. Alcatraz was supposed to be the end of the line. They were assigned to adjoining cells. A fatal mistake the prison would regret forever. There was a fourth man in the plan. Alan West, a car thief, serving time for, appropriately enough, helping someone escape from prison. He was in the cell next to the Anglins, and he was in on everything from the beginning. But Alan West would become the most important witness to history, because Alan West was left behind. The Rock. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a statement. Located on a lonely island in the middle of San Francisco Bay. It had held captives since the Civil War. But in 1934, at the height of America's war on crime, it was redesigned into the most secure prison the world had ever seen. The redesign included tougher iron bars that could resist any tool, strategically positioned guard towers, with machine guns, strict rules, with a dozen checks of prisoners every single day, the cold, rough waters of the Pacific surrounding everything. Perched on a rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz was America's most notorious prison. It wasn't for just any criminal. Its inmates were the worst of the worst. We're talking about dangerous public enemies like Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly, and inmates who had already escaped from other prisons. For nearly 30 years, Alcatraz was considered completely escape-proof. 36 men had tried to break out in 14 separate attempts. Almost all of them were either caught or died trying. But on a cold morning in June 1962, everything changed. 3 men vanished from their cells, leaving behind a mystery that endures to this day. How did they pull off the impossible? Next time on Dark Evidence, we'll examine their ingenious plan, the tools they used, and the one mistake that left a 4th man behind. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. December 1961. 6 months before the escape. In the cold, damp cells of Alcatraz, the nights were long. Lights out at 9:30 p.m. Guards making rounds every hour. Nothing to do but lie in the dark and think. For Frank Morris, thinking was dangerous. According to Alan West's later testimony to the FBI, the idea began when one of the men came across something unexpected. Old saw blades, discarded by work crews, left in a corner where no one thought to look. It was the spark they needed. The tools. Over the following months, the men gathered an astonishing collection of contraband, saw blades, carefully hidden in cells, a homemade drill made from the motor of a broken vacuum cleaner, spoons stolen from the cafeteria, a musical instrument converted into a tool to inflate a raft, over 50 raincoats stolen from various sources. They hid everything in a secret workshop they created above their cell block, a space no guard ever checked, accessible only through a ventilator shaft they'd soon discover. We worked at night. After lights out, one of us would keep watch while the others worked. We made a periscope from scraps so we could see the guards coming down the hall. If anyone came, we'd slide back into our cells and pretend to be asleep. The cells. Each cell had an air vent at the back, about 6 inches by 10 inches, covered by a metal grill. The grill was held in place by bolts that could theoretically be removed if you had the right tools and enough time. But time was the one thing they didn't have. Guards checked the cells constantly. Any sign of tampering would mean the whole, solitary confinement, maybe worse. So they developed a method. Using their homemade drill, they drilled closely spaced holes around each bolt, so close together that the metal between them would eventually give way. They worked slowly, carefully, collecting the metal shavings and hiding them. After each session, they'd put the grill back in place, covering the loose bolts with a mixture of soap and paint that matched the color of the wall. It took months, but one by one, the grills came loose. The corridor behind the cells was a utility corridor, a space about 3 feet wide, filled with pipes and wires, unguarded, almost forgotten. Once the grills were removed, the men could squeeze through and enter this hidden passageway. From there, they could move between cells without ever being seen. It felt like another world back there. Dark, dusty, full of cobwebs. No one had been in there for years. We could talk to each other through the walls, pass tools, plan. The prison didn't know they'd given us our own private hallway. At the end of the corridor, they found something even better. A shaft leading up to the top of the cell block, 30 feet above. Using the pipes as a ladder, they climbed up and discovered a space no one ever looked. The area just below the roof, forgotten and dark. This became their workshop. They set up a system. One man would stay in the cell as a lookout, watching for guards. The others would climb up and work through the night. They built a periscope from scraps to see around corners, life preservers from stolen raincoats, a 6 by 14 foot rubber raft, seams carefully stitched and then vulcanized by holding them against hot steam pipes. Wooden paddles, carved from scraps, and makeshift wetsuits to survive the cold water. The idea for the raft came from magazines they found in the prison library. Articles about survival at sea, about rubber rafts and inflatable boats. The steam pipes in the workshop were used to seal the seams, making them watertight. Frank was the brains. He figured out most of it. The rest of us just did what he said. He'd look at something, a pipe, a piece of metal, an old raincoat, and see something we couldn't. He saw a way out. The ventilator. Their final obstacle was getting out of the building itself. The ceiling was 30 feet high, but they'd already climbed that. At the top, they found a large ventilator shaft leading to the roof. It was bolted shut with heavy iron bolts. They tried everything, saw blades, drills, nothing worked. Then Morris had an idea. They fashioned a fake bolt out of soap, painted to look like iron. On the night of the escape, they'd break the real bolts, slip through, and replace them with the fake ones. By morning, when guards looked up, they'd see bolts that looked perfectly normal. It was genius. It was insane. It just might work. The dummy heads, but they still had one problem. The morning bed check. If guards looked into their cells and saw empty beds, the alarm would be raised within hours. They needed to buy time. So they built dummy heads. Using papier, MCH made from toilet paper and glue, they sculpted heads that looked roughly like their own. They painted them with flesh tone paint stolen from the art supplies. And for the final touch, real human hair, collected from the prison barbershop floor. When they were finished, the heads looked disturbingly real. Propped on pillows and tucked under blankets, they might just fool a tired guard making his rounds at 3 in the morning. The waiting began. By June 1962, everything was ready. The vents were loose, the raft was built, the paddles were carved, and the heads were waiting. All they needed was the right night. They watched the weather, studied the tides, and listened to the guards' conversations, waiting for the moment when conditions were perfect. On June 11th, they decided, tomorrow night they would go. Next time on Dark Evidence, in Part 3, we relive the escape itself. Hour by hour, minute by minute. The climb through the ventilator, the slide down the bakery smokestack, the launch into the freezing bay, and the moment when everything went wrong for Alan West. Dark Evidence, where the evidence tells the story, but the heart remembers. Subscribe now. June 11th, 1962, 8:30 p.m. Lights out at Alcatraz. The heavy steel doors slam shut. Darkness falls over the cell block. 234 men lie in their bunks, waiting for sleep that won't come, but 3 of them aren't waiting for anything. Frank Morris lies in his bunk, fully dressed under his blanket. His heart pounds. His mouth is dry. He's done this before. Escaped from prisons, outsmarted guards, beaten the system. But never like this. Never from the rock. In the cell next to him, John and Clarence Anglin are doing the same. Their dummy heads are already in place, propped on pillows, covered with blankets. In the dark, they look real. In the dark, they look asleep. They wait for the guard to pass. 9 p.m., the first check. Footsteps echo down the hall. A guard walks slowly, flashlight beam dancing across cell doors. He stops at each cell, shines the light inside, counts heads. 137, 138, 139. The dummy heads stare back at him. He sees nothing unusual. He moves on. The men breathe again. 9:30 p.m. The corridor. As soon as the guard is gone, Maurice moves. He slides out of his bunk, crosses to the back of his cell. and removes the vent grill, now held in place by nothing but gravity. He squeezes through the opening and drops into the utility corridor. The Anglins follow. One by one, they disappear into the darkness behind the walls. Alan West is supposed to join them. He's done everything they've done. His vent is loose. His dummy is ready. He reaches up to remove the grill, and it won't budge. He tries again. Nothing. In the darkness, he can't see what's wrong. He pushes harder. The grill shifts slightly, then jams. He's seen this before. The concrete around the bolts has shifted, warped by years of moisture and salt air. His opening has shrunk. He pushes until his fingers bleed. Nothing. The others are waiting in the corridor. They whisper through the wall. "Come on now." West can't answer. He can't move. He's trapped in his cell, while his friends are about to make history. 10 p.m., the climb. Morris and the Anglins move through the corridor, using the periscope to check for guards. Clear, they climb the pipes to the top of the cell block, 30 feet above. The ventilator shaft looms above them. They've been here before, practiced this climb dozens of times. But tonight is different. Tonight, there's no turning back. Frank Morris reaches up and snaps the real bolts. The crack echoes, impossibly loud in the dead silence. He catches the heavy cover before it can crash down, handing it to John Anglin, who passes it to his brother Clarence. They scramble through the dark shaft and onto the roof of Alcatraz. The sky is clear, filled with stars. Below, the bay is a black, cold expanse. In the distance, the lights of San Francisco twinkle like a promise. Freedom, just a mile and a half away. It's 10:30 at night. Their escape route takes them across the vast roof, keeping low to avoid the searchlights of the guard towers. They reach the rear of the cell house and find the bakery smokestack rising from below. This is their ladder down. Using a rope made of knotted sheets, they tie it off. One by one, they shimmy down the stack, dropping silently into the prison yard. The yard is dark. The guards in the towers are focused outward, on the water, watching for boats. No one ever looks at the prison itself. No one expects an escape from within. By 11, they reach the shore. They cross the yard, sticking to the shadows, and arrive at the island's most isolated point. It's time to inflate their raft. Using a concertina, its bellows, modified into a makeshift air pump, they begin. It takes longer than they thought. The air leaks slightly. They pump faster, desperate. Finally, the raft takes shape. A 6 by 14-foot vessel made from stolen raincoats, stitched and sealed by hand. It looks absurd, impossible, but it's their only chance. June 12, 1962, 7:30 a.m. The warden's phone rings. The voice on the other end is shaking. "We've got an escape. 3 of them, Maurice and the Anglins." Within hours, the FBI is notified. The Coast Guard is mobilized. Every law enforcement agency in California is put on alert. The most famous prison in America has been breached, and the whole country wants answers. Special Agent John Rhodes, FBI report. This was unprecedented. No one had ever escaped from Alcatraz. The prison was designed to be escape-proof, and yet 3 men had simply vanished into thin air. The search begins. The Coast Guard throws everything they have into the search. Boats crisscross the bay. Helicopters sweep the shoreline. Officers check every beach, every cove, every possible landing spot. Within 2 days, they find something. A packet of letters, sealed in rubber, floating in the water. They belong to one of the escapees. Then more, paddle-like pieces of wood, bits of rubber in a tube. A homemade life vest, washed up on Cronkite Beach. The evidence suggests the raft didn't make it. It suggests the men might have gone into the water. It suggests the bay might have claimed them. But there are no bodies, no proof of death, just pieces of debris and 1,000 questions. The informant, Alan West, left behind in his cell, initially says nothing. But as the days pass and the pressure mounts, he begins to talk. He tells investigators everything. The plan, the tools, the workshop, the dummy heads. He identifies the saw blades, the drill, the raft materials. His testimony gives investigators their first real picture of what happened. But it also raises a disturbing question. If West knew the plan so well, why didn't he make it out? West's story changes over time. First he says his vent was stuck. Then he says he lost his nerve. Then he says he was supposed to stay behind as a decoy. Investigators never fully believe him, but they never prove he's lying. The FBI's conclusion. For 17 years, the FBI investigates the Alcatraz escape. They interview hundreds of witnesses. They track down every lead. They follow rumors of sightings across the country. A man matching Morris's description in South America. 2 brothers working on a farm in North Dakota. A mysterious grave in Canada. Nothing checks out. In their final report, dated December 31st, 1979, the FBI concludes, based on the available evidence, it is the opinion of the FBI that the escapees likely drowned in the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. The strong currents, low water temperatures, and lack of any credible evidence of survival support this conclusion. Case closed, or so they thought. The marshals take over. But the FBI's closure isn't the end. The US Marshals Service inherits the case, and they keep it open. Even today, more than 60 years later, the Marshals still list Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin as wanted fugitives. Their files remain active. Their photos remain posted. Their names remain on the list. Because no one can prove they died. The evidence they couldn't explain. Over the years, pieces of evidence emerged that complicated the official story. 1962, a car theft. The night of the escape, a car was reported stolen in Marin County, exactly where the escapees planned to land. The car was later found abandoned, but no one could connect it to the escapees. 1975, a mysterious visit. A woman claimed that a man matching Clarence Anglin's description visited his mother's grave in 1975, 13 years after the escape. The graveyard sighting was never confirmed, but the family refused to cooperate with investigators. 1993, a photograph surfaced showing 2 men who looked remarkably like the Anglin brothers standing in Brazil. The photo was analyzed by experts who couldn't confirm or deny its authenticity. 2015, the letter. A letter allegedly written by John Anglin was sent to San Francisco police. It claimed all 3 survived, that Frank Morris died in 2005, that John himself was old and sick. The letter's authenticity was never proven. 2020, the nephew's claim. The Anglin family's nephew went public, insisting his uncles made it to Brazil. He provided no proof, but his conviction was unwavering. The family's silence. Throughout the investigation, one thing remained constant: the Anglin family's refusal to cooperate. When FBI agents visited their mother's house in Florida, she said nothing. When reporters asked about her sons, she turned away. When the nephew made his claims, other family members stayed silent. Why? Fear of prosecution, loyalty to their brothers, or because they knew something no one else did. My grandmother never gave up hope. She lit a candle for them every Sunday until the day she died. She believed they were alive. She believed they'd come home. She never stopped believing. Next time on Dark Evidence. In Part 5, we examine the legacy, the theories that won't die, the evidence that won't disappear, the families that won't talk, and the question that remains after 60 years. What really happened to the men who escaped the rock? Dark evidence, where the evidence tells the story, but the heart remembers. Subscribe now. Ever heard of Alcatraz, the world's most inescapable prison, sitting on a rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay? They said nobody could ever break out and survive. But in 1962, 3 men decided to challenge the impossible. Frank Morris, along with brothers John and Clarence Anglin, planned one of the most daring and intricate escapes in history. For months, they worked in secret. Using sharpened spoons, they painstakingly chipped away at the crumbling concrete around the air vents in their cells. To hide their work, they crafted fake vent covers out of cardboard. But that's not even the craziest part. They created incredibly lifelike dummy heads from soap, toilet paper, and real human hair stolen from the prison barbershop. Each night, they'd place these heads on their pillows, fooling the guards during their rounds. On the night of June 11, 1962, they squeezed through the holes, climbed up the utility corridor, and made their way to the roof. From there, they shimmied down a drain pipe and vanished into the darkness. Their plan was to use a makeshift raft, cleverly constructed from over 50 stolen raincoats, to cross the treacherous, icy waters of the bay. The next morning, the guards found the dummy heads, and the alarm was sounded. A massive manhunt began. One of the largest ever pieces of their raft and some personal belongings were found floating in the bay, but the men themselves were never seen again. Did they drown in the frigid currents, as the FBI officially concluded? Or did they make it to shore and start new lives? Decades later, the mystery continues. A letter, supposedly from John Anglin, surfaced in 2013, claiming they all survived. The family of the Anglin brothers even presented photos they believe show the brothers in Brazil in the 1970s. The FBI tested the letter for DNA, but the results were inconclusive. So what do you think? Did they pull off the impossible, or did the unforgiving waters of the bay claim them? The story of the Alcatraz escape remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical deep dives. 2018 analysis. Forensic experts re-examined the 1993 Brazil photo and concluded the facial features are consistent with the Anglin brothers. But we cannot say with certainty. 2020 family claims they lived in Brazil. They had families. They're gone now, but they made it. The human cost. Behind the mystery, there are real people with real pain. The Anglin family lived for decades under a cloud of suspicion. Their mother, who died in 1999, never knew for sure what happened to her sons. Their siblings carried the weight of unanswered questions. Their nieces and nephews grew up with a family secret they couldn't confirm or deny. Widow of an investigator, unpublished memoir. My husband worked this case for 15 years. He became obsessed. He'd wake up at night talking about currents and tides and whether a man could survive that water. It ate him alive. In the end, he said to me, "I don't know if they made it, but I know they could have." And that's what keeps me up at night. The legacy of the rock. Alcatraz closed as a prison in 1963, just 1 year after the escape. The island is now a national park, visited by millions of tourists who come to see the cells, the corridors, the workshop where 3 men built their dream of freedom. The cells of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers are preserved exactly as they were. Visitors peer through the bars and see the vents. The dummy heads replicas now. The tiny spaces where men spent years planning a single night. Park ranger tour narration. Some people come here expecting to see a prison. What they find is a story about hope, about the human spirit's refusal to be caged. Whether they made it or not, these three men showed that even the strongest walls can't hold a determined mind. The final question: so what really happened on June 11th, 1962? Did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers paddle to freedom, disappear into America, and live out their lives as free men? Or did the cold waters of San Francisco Bay claim them, their bodies swept out to sea, their fate forever unknown? The evidence says they probably drowned. The absence of proof says they might have survived. The family's silence says they knew something. The passage of time says we may never know. Sometimes I dream about that night. I dream I got through the vent. I dream I'm with them, paddling in the dark, watching the lights of the city get closer. And then I wake up and I'm still here, still in a cell, still wondering what happened to my friends. That was the voice of Alan West, the fourth man in the infamous 1962 Alcatraz escape. He was the one who got left behind. He served his time and was released in 1967. He died in 1978, never knowing what became of the men he helped free. On June 11th, 1962, three men climbed out of their cells, crossed the roof of Alcatraz, and launched a raft into the dark waters of San Francisco Bay. They were never seen again. Whether they drowned that night or lived to old age in some distant country, one thing is certain: they achieved the impossible. They escaped the rock. They became legends, and they left behind a mystery that will never die. Their names are Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin. And somewhere, maybe, they're still free. If you've watched this series, you've traveled through one of the greatest mysteries in American history. You've seen the plan, the execution, the investigation, and the legacy. You've heard the evidence and the doubts. And now, like everyone else, you have to decide for yourself: did they make it? This is what dark evidence is about. Not easy answers, not comforting conclusions, just the facts, the stories, and the questions that remain. If you believe the truth matters, subscribe, hit that bell, share this video. Help us keep these stories alive. Dark evidence, where the evidence tells the story, but the heart remembers. Subscribe now.